Hi everyone, thanks for joining me. Today I'm going to give you a quick video tutorial with some tips on how to create an ombre stitched lace card. There's a couple of key products that you're going to need in order to make these cards. Obviously the stitched lace dies by Stampin' Up are the basis for this card. They're a beautiful die. They come with this massive base plate that creates really gorgeous lace technique, and it also has a coordinating trim piece so that you can cut your lace to varying lengths, and I'll show you how to use that in this tutorial. The other thing that's really important and pretty handy to have to make these cards is a die brush. Now Stampin' Up's got a new version that is coming, or is in the new catalogue, that fits with the Take Your Pick tool, which is fabulous, but an old die brush, anything that you've got that will help you remove these little pieces from the die is a must. Now, as for the materials that you'll need to make the card, it's pretty simple. For an ombre effect, you're just going to need, obviously, a card base, which is, for me, an Australian standard half an A4 piece of cardstock. I then got a base for my ombre effect, which is cut at 3 7/8 inches wide by 5 7/8 inches long. There will be some trimming and you'll see what that looks like. You'll also need 4 pieces of cardstock in a colour tone that sort of goes from dark through to light. These are sort of teal colours that I've chosen here. I've got the new Pretty Peacock, Bermuda Bay, Coastal Cabana and Mint Macaroon. The dimensions for these ones are about 1 3/4 inches wide. You'll need each colour piece, and I've cut these at about 4 1/4 inches long, and so they are wider than the card base, the card front, but there's a reason for that. So essentially that's all the main card pieces that you need. I will give you some quick tips now on how to not only cut the lace but to also assemble the card. So the first tip I've got for assembling, cutting the cards, the lace rather, is the sandwich that I use for my main die here. Now, it's going to be very different to what other people might have recommended in the past, but it's what works for me. It's probably a little bit taboo in that I use my magnetic platform in conjunction with my precision base plate, which I know most people say don't put those two together, but I have just found that for cutting this lace, this is the absolute by far best combination of layering that works really easy for me. So I do stick them together. Now they do magnetize together, so you do have to be a little bit careful. So that's the magnetic base plate with the precision cutting die there on top. Then you're going to get your lace die, stitched lace die, and what is really important to do is that you get at least 1 1/2 of these lace rows on each of your pieces of 1 3/4 inch cardstock pieces. Now you're just going to try and center them in the middle of the die this way, and I use a bit of washi tape to hold down the pieces like that, and you can usually get 3 of the pieces of coloured cardstock down the length of your die like that, and then you can turn it over. I washi tape those ones down as well. Put your plain acrylic plate on the top, run it through the Big Shot, take the top plate off, then I would turn your die 90 degrees, run it back through the Big Shot again, just to make sure that all of those little tiny intricate pieces are cut out. It's really important to get a really good cut on that. So what I'll do to show you the next tip is I'll keep this one piece attached on there and run this through the Big Shot and show you what that looks like. Okay, so what you'll have when you've run it through the Big Shot is, if you flip it over, you should actually be able to see that every little tiny lace hole is really well cut through, and you can see it on the reverse of your cardstock. If you can't, really don't take it off of here until you run it back through. Just try a few different angles to get every little bit covered with the Big Shot. Now, it's really also important that you remove all of the little cutout pieces from your piece of cardstock before you take it off the die. Once you take it off the die, it's a little bit trickier to do, so I'll show you what I do. I start using the foam mat that came with my die brush, and start by just giving the die a quick brush with the die brush, and that removes quite a few pieces, and it's pretty good. It works quite well, so I'll show you what that looks like. So you can see it's removed a lot of those pieces already, and you can see the dies, the holes in the lace are quite visible. Now the thing I found to make it even better, still with the cardstock in place, is to hold the die in my hand and then just really be quite rough and run the die brush over the top of the die without that mat behind it. Now you can see by doing that, I don't know how well you can see, that's quite a few more pieces of the cutout have come away from the die, simply because there's not that sort of mat on the back. Now it will get most of the pieces out, but you will see that you still do have a few little road pieces that need a little bit more encouragement to come out from the die. So what I do with those is I take my paper piercing tool and I just sit and quickly pop out those last few pieces that seem to be a little bit stubborn. They're certainly cut, they're just not popping out, so I just do that. So this card is not hard at all to make. It's just a little bit time consuming, and actually sometimes I don't mind those little bit of mind numbing kind of activities. So there you go. Most of those are now cut, are now popped out. And like I said, it's really important that you do this before you take the paper out of the die. And the reason is it's just a lot easier because you've got a relatively hard base here to lean on to poke things out, so it prevents your cardstock from ripping or tearing. So pretty quick, pretty easy. Now if you've got 3 pieces in there, you'll have all 3 done at the same time. Don't worry if you miss some of them. You can fix it up before you finalise your card. Then I just use my paper piercing tool and just lift up the corner and peel my beautiful piece of lace off my die. Okay, so once you've got your die cut through your pieces of cardstock like that, and obviously you'll have all 4 of these beautiful little sections done, you'll need to use the other piece that comes in the die set, which is the trim edge here. Now I'll give you the quick sandwich that I use for that. This one is probably nothing new to anybody. You're not going to use the precision base plate this time, you're just going to use the magnetic base plate, and you're going to get in your normal acrylic pad here. You're going to place your lace on top of that. You're going to use your edge piece to match up the sort of little round arches of dots there that are on the lace panel. Now I do have a magnetic platform and I absolutely love it to pieces, but I do get even more nervous when I cut out little tiny intricate pieces like this. So I do grab another piece of washi tape just as an added extra bonus for holding down this edge here. Okay, so then once you've run it through the Big Shot with the trim on it, you'll actually have made your first lace piece there. You need to do the same thing for all 4 coloured pieces that you're going to use for your ombre effect, and then you'll get 3 out of on the one die, and then you'll have to cut one single piece on its own. You'll also then need to take your piece of white cardstock and you're going to place that onto the die, and again I use a little bit of washi tape to hold that one in place. Again, the same sandwich as before with your precision base plate to run that one through, and again turning and rotating the die until you run it through a few times to cut all the pieces out. Same principle with the die brush, and then once you've done that you can trim the end off that white piece, and that's what you'll be left with. So that's the basis for your card. You'll have, and I'll show you in a different colour scheme here, but you've got your white card piece cut out with the lace, trimmed the end off, so I'll get rid of that, and then you should have 4 pieces of ombre looking cardstock all sort of cut and laced up and the ends all trimmed off. They'll be varying lengths, but don't stress about that too much. That's essentially what you need to make the basis for your ombre card. So I'll show you a few tips now on putting this one together. So what I usually do is I'll start with the lightest colour in the ombre effect that I have, and I use Tombow glue to glue this together. You can use a flying tip glue pen if that's something you're more comfortable with using, but Tombow works perfectly well. So to assemble this one, all you're going to do is take your lightest piece of coloured cardstock in your ombre. You're going to start by leaving the first end of your card base the plain white, and you're going to overlay the lightest colour on the next whole row of lace pieces to match up with what we've got here. So it's just a matter of laying that over the top so that the lace pattern lines up. It's relatively easy to do, just like that. And I just put a couple of dots of Tombow down to hold that in place. So on the back of this one, there's a few places that I find you can add your Tombow glue to. So you can just sort of add it around the edges of these round pieces. Just a little bit, doesn't have to be too much. It'll adhere quite well. And then sort of down here with these little archy pieces. Then all I do, and don't worry that it's not the same width at this stage, we trim it off right at the end. So just put your pieces over the top of each other so that they line up pretty nice. And I'm sorry if you can't see this because I'm looking at it directly. It doesn't have to be uber perfect, but it will line up pretty nicely for you. Let me see if I can zoom in a little bit so that you can see exactly what I'm doing there. So I'm just adhering that straight on the top. So while the Tombow's still a bit wet, make sure you move it around so that you do get a nice line up with all of those lace holes. It doesn't really matter too much. Then you're going to take your next colour in your sequence and again do the very next thing where you're going to overlay onto the next row down like that. So again, same thing, a little bit of Tombow glue, and just do a layer at a time right through to the very darkest colour. So I'll show you what that looks like. Alright, so once you've got all of your colours adhered on, and for this example here I've got Lovely Lipstick, Rococo Rose, Blushing Bride, Petal Pink, and obviously on the white, you can trim your front. You can see that it's not all even at the top and it looks a bit messy. If you turn over to the back, this gives you sort of the size that you want to trim it to. So I have just got a little paper trimmer, which I will grab, and I just then use my white base here to just trim back the overhang on this one. So all you have to do is put this onto a card base. I have actually, for my examples, tied a little bit of twine around my card. So I'm just going to put this on with a couple of dimensionals. Don't know about you, but I always seem to struggle with tying bows when I'm on camera. Now, the last thing that you want to do is also elevate this end here so that it is all dimensioned off of the card base. So I use mini dimensionals to do that. So I'll show you quickly how I do that. You're going to just fold your card base in half. Now I've pre-scored this one just to make it a little bit easier because I am using the thick Whisper White cardstock, which can be a little bit tricky to fold if you don't pre-score it, well, I find anyway. So I've just folded that in half for my card base, and I'm going to then just place my ombre onto the top of that, which is just so pretty. So pretty. So dimensioned that up on the front just to give it a little bit of extra special depth, and you get the shadowing and stuff when you dimension it up. It's just beautiful. I've prepared a little tiny just a little note to say hello, which is from a little lace stamp set that does coordinate with the dies. So I'm just going to put a couple of dimensionals on the back of that one. And essentially that's your ombre, lace ombre card look finished. It's a really, really simple card to make. It does take a fair bit of time because you've just got so much extra cutaway cardstock to remove as you go through, but I think you'll appreciate the final look. I hope you have fun with those ones, guys. I can't wait to see your ombre colour coordination combinations, and there's so many with the Stampin' Up colours, so have fun with that one. Thanks for watching. Bye.